The NBA told me that their investigation is underway and it will most certainly include interviews with key subjects as part of both the Clippers side, Kawhi Leonard himself.
So remember that Kawhi Leonard scandal we talked about a few days ago? The one where Pablo Torrey said Kawhi pulled $48 million through a phony tree planting company backed by Steve Ballmer? This story just jumped from suspicious to outright outrageous. What went down on Thursday might be the smoking gun that could bring down the Los Angeles Clippers. And if you take Adam Silver's Wednesday press conference at face value, this could be why every team owner is suddenly sweating over their own side deals.
I heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal. We're not a court of law at the end of the day either, that we have broad authority to look at all information and to weigh it.
Quick reset for anyone who missed our last video. Pablo Torrey spent 7 months digging and found that Kawhi Leonard was paid $48 million for a no-show job by a company called Aspiration. Steve Ballmer put $50 million into that same company. A former employee even told Torrey the deal was to circumvent the salary cap. After Torrey's report dropped, Steve Ballmer sat down on ESPN with Ramona Shelburne, and somehow it made the mess even bigger. The whole thing felt like damage control, the kind a publicist does when a client is about to blow everything up. And honestly, Steve Ballmer ended up looking defensive and suspicious, not cleared of anything.
These are guys who committed fraud. Look, they conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me. I made an investment in these guys thinking it was on the up and up, and they conned me.
Steve Ballmer said, "They conned me," 3 times in a single sentence. He's the richest owner in sports, worth $150 billion, and the former Microsoft boss, yet we're supposed to believe a tree planting company fooled him. But here's where Ballmer really stumbled. He told Shelburne the Clippers introduced Kawhi to Aspiration in November 2021. So the deals were already done, yet you still made the introduction anyway after everything was supposedly locked in. Then, out of nowhere, Kawhi signs a $48 million agreement with no work required, and the contract even says it ends the moment he leaves the Clippers, which makes that coincidence look wild. Come on, Steve. When Shelburne asked on air why Aspiration would pay Kawhi Leonard $28 million, actually make that $48 million with stock options, you said you didn't know, and that you can't predict why they do that, which sounds impossible for someone in your position. The same person cooperating with the Department of Justice investigation into the company says he never even asked why his star was getting more than Leonardo DiCaprio, Drake, and Robert Downey Jr. combined, not a penny less. What dropped on Thursday could change everything. Seriously, everything. This might be the line between the Clippers losing draft picks and Steve Ballmer possibly being forced to sell the team if this all sticks. Ready for this? Pablo Torrey got bank statements showing that in December 2022, when Aspiration was on life support, basically bankrupt and burning cash, Kawhi Leonard was due a $1,750,000 quarterly payment under the deal, but Aspiration was broke, plain and simple. They couldn't pay him, then out of nowhere something jaw-dropping happened. On December 6, 2022, a firm named DEA8088 Investments wired $1.99 million to Aspiration. 9 days later, on December 15th, Kawhi Leonard finally received his $1,750,000. That very same day, Aspiration cut 20% of its workforce. Now you might be asking, why does this matter? Because the man behind DEA88 Investments is Dennis Wong, the Clippers' minority owner and Steve Ballmer's former Harvard roommate. He holds 1% of the franchise and sits courtside beside Ballmer at games. Let me make this crystal clear for you. The company was on life support, and they still owed Kawhi Leonard money. Uncle Dennis was reportedly furious, calling and demanding payment from them. Then, out of nowhere, the Clippers' minority owner stepped in with almost the precise amount to cover Kawhi's payout, plus a little for wire fees. A former Aspiration finance employee told Torrey, and I quote, "It really looks like the Clippers, through Dennis Wong, put in $2 million in order for Aspiration to be able to make the $1,750,000 payment to Kawhi. That's what it looks like to me." If you think that was random, it actually gets far more troubling. This was the first time Dennis Wong had ever put money into Aspiration. right as the company was sliding toward bankruptcy. They couldn't make payroll, and they were facing a federal investigation. And Dennis Wong decides, yeah, you know what, this is a good time to invest in this company. I think they're going places. Come on, guys. But hold on, there's more, and it might sting if you're a Clippers fan. You know what else Torrey uncovered? Dennis Wong's daughter worked at Aspiration. She was working as a project manager while all of this was unfolding. Are we really supposed to believe Wong didn't know the company was collapsing when his own daughter was on the inside? The Clippers answered the new report with a statement saying the specifics of their relationship with Aspiration are under NBA review. But the reality is the company was a flimsy house of cards that misled Steve and plenty of others. Focus on what they left unsaid. They didn't dispute that Wong supplied the investment. They didn't challenge the timing. They didn't refute that the funds went straight to Kawhi Leonard. They only asserted that Aspiration was fraudulent. No surprise there. That's the point. Now let's shift to Adam Silver's Wednesday press conference, because this gets interesting. Silver said the burden of proof sits with the NBA, not the Clippers. Then he followed with a line that made every lawyer's ears snap to attention. You know what that signals to me? Silver probably doesn't expect a literal email from Ballmer saying, pay Kawhi to get around the cap. Instead, he's pointing to circumstantial proof, like a minority owner conveniently dumping in the exact cash Kawhi needed right when the payment was due and looming. And here's the part almost no one is discussing. Silver also said, my powers are very broad. I have a full range of financial penalties, draft picks, suspensions, etc. That etc. is doing some serious work here. You know what fits under etc.? Forcing an owner to sell. Here's the real reason I think other owners are freaking out, because they've seen this play before and it stinks of deja vu. Remember when the Toronto Star reported that Uncle Dennis pushed the Raptors for similar side perks back in 2019? He even wanted a slice of ownership in the Toronto Maple Leafs. This wasn't a rumor floating on a message board, it was a reported ask tied to real negotiations, the kind of thing that sends shockwaves through every front office. When the team said no, he allegedly pivoted and asked for $10 million a year in sponsorship cash arranged by the Raptors, money Kawhi wouldn't have to lift a finger for. Sound familiar? It's the exact same playbook, just run by a different franchise. You can almost hear the script flipping pages, the numbers match, the structure matches, and the timing lines up like clockwork. And the Toronto Raptors still refused. Give them credits. They won a title with Kawhi Leonard and still held the line. Imagine how badly they must have wanted him to come back so they could run it back with the same group and try to rule the East again. That temptation had to be enormous, yet they chose the hard road. No shortcuts, no side doors, no exceptions. This was the summer of 2019. The Warriors weren't the Warriors that year. They just lost Klay Thompson to a torn ACL. And the Achilles tear came later. Kevin Durant had bolted to the Brooklyn Nets days earlier. The balance of power was wobbling, and a single decision from Kawhi could tilt the entire league landscape overnight. LeBron James had gone to the Lakers the season before. If Kawhi stayed, the East likely ran through Toronto, and they still refused to bend the rules in this case. Credit where it's due. Raptors fans had to be heartbroken, and the team still did the right thing. They stared down the cost of saying no, and paid it anyway. They could have kept Kawhi Leonard if not for those demands. Even the Lakers said no when Uncle Dennis floated part ownership, a house, and a private jet. But the Clippers? Those asks would make any owner flinch, and yet one franchise found a way to make the numbers sing. They found a way to say yes without saying yes, at least on paper. Bruce Arthur of the Toronto Star said his sources told him the asks to Toronto line up almost perfectly with what Kawhi wound up getting from Aspiration. It's like Uncle Dennis had a target around $10 million a year and kept shopping until someone agreed to pay it. The method wasn't secretive, it was persistent, relentless, and laser-focused on a dollar figure. Now picture this for a moment. You're Dennis Wong. You're worth hundreds of millions. You know the players, you know the risks, and you know exactly which wire could make a problem disappear or appear solved. Your buddy Steve already sunk $50 million into this company. It's circling the drain. Federal investigators are sniffing around and you drop in $2 million. Why? That transfer isn't casual coffee money, it's a move with consequences, timing, and intent. To rescue a company that's already toast, or to make sure one very specific payment clears? The timing says everything. Money shows up, the payment follows, and the layoffs hit like a siren, cause and effect staring us in the face. This wasn't an early stage bet when aspiration looked promising. This was when they were literally laying off employees the same day Kawhi got paid. That's a bailout mission, not an investment. You don't send a lifeboat to a ship that's already at the bottom unless there's someone on board you can't afford to lose. Then the Honorable Mark Cuban defended Steve Ballmer, saying Steve isn't foolish enough to let a company go under if he were using it to funnel money. But Mark, what if there was no choice? What if the feds were closing in and letting it fail was the only move left? If the walls are closing in, sometimes the smartest play is to step back quickly. What if keeping it alive would have exposed even more? And think about this, if it's a clean endorsement, why does the team's minority owner need to personally bankroll a player payment? A real marketing deal doesn't need a secret guardian angel writing emergency checks. Why is Uncle Dennis personally calling and demanding money? Why is that payment flagged as critical in the books while the company is cutting staff just to keep the lights on? Adam Silver also said something interesting in his presser. When details don't add up, the questions only get louder. The commissioner of the NBA says he didn't know one of his stars had a $48 million endorsement deal. Here's where it really starts to look shady. Either Adam Silver is protecting the league or the Clippers hid this so well that even the league office was in the dark. Neither option makes the league look clean, and that's the point. The commissioner didn't even know. And if it was that secret, why? What legitimate endorsement needs to be hidden from the league's top office? If a deal can't withstand daylight, it probably wasn't built for daylight. Here's what I think is happening. The NBA knows this looks bad. Really bad. They also know if they crush the Clippers, they risk exposing other deals around the league. Pull one thread and you might unravel half the sweater. Remember, Pablo Torrey said this is only the first investigation he's doing. You know what other situation raises eyebrows? The second domino always tells you how fast the line might fall. Jalen Brunson signing early, 4 years, $156.5 million. Instead of waiting for a much bigger 5-year max near $270 million last year. That's a $113.5 million haircut to stay with the Knicks. He didn't have to do that. Teams call that value, agents call it leverage, and fans call it loyalty, but accountants call it difference. We've seen discounts before, but not at that scale for a star in his prime. I'm not claiming Brunson did anything improper, but Pablo Torrey says he's looking into it next, and that's the league's nightmare. If similar patterns pop up and it looks like players had off-book motives, the foundation of the league takes a hit. It shakes trust, it shakes parity, and it shakes every future negotiation. The Ringer quoted a team executive saying people around the league aren't buying the Clippers' denials, and it's a stretch to believe aspiration acted alone. Think about it. How many teams have sponsors that also sponsor their players? Follow the money and you'll usually find the map. How many of those deals are truly above board? How many owners have stakes in companies that just happen to pay their stars? Silver keeps saying he needs the totality of evidence before acting. Everyone wants proof, until the proof points at them. But what could be more total than this? Steve Ballmer invests $50 million, Kawhi reportedly gets $48 million. The payment structure ties the money to him staying with the Clippers. If it walks like a retention bonus and quacks like a retention bonus, what are we really looking at here? Kawhi does no visible work for the fee. When the company can't pay, the minority owner wires almost exactly what's needed. 9 days later, the payment clears, and the company immediately lays people off. That sequence isn't random, it's choreography. If that's not enough smoke, what is? A signed confession? A video of Ballmer handing Kawhi a bag while saying this was to get around the cap? We're not children. You can connect dots without a neon arrow. And look at how carefully Ballmer answered in his ESPN interview. Asked if Uncle Dennis requested impermissible benefits, his response danced around it. That's not a no. When a no is available and you don't use it, that silence speaks. That's lawyer speak for I'm not answering that. And when he said they conned me 3 times in one sentence about aspiration, it sounded rehearsed, not rattled. You know who doesn't get conned out of $50 million? People who treat every check as a contract, not a favor. The guy who ran Microsoft. The man worth roughly $150 billion. Now we need to talk about the nuclear option. If this triggers the rulebook's harshest penalties, the aftershocks will ripple for years. The fallout would be wild. If the NBA finds the Clippers guilty, they could void Kawhi's contract on the spot. He'd become a free agent right before the season begins. Imagine the phones lighting up across the league. Picture it! The Thunder have cap space. The Spurs have cap space. Suddenly, every contender is gaming out contingency plans and late-night calls. Maybe he doesn't return to San Antonio after all that history, but you get the point. It would add serious spice to the season. But let's be real, whoever signs Kawhi would likely face him being hit with a long suspension. That's a high-stakes gamble even for a top 5 talent. Which would just become another reason to load manage, right? But this is bigger than Kawhi. This is about the integrity of the entire salary cap system. When the rules wobble, every roster move starts to look like a loophole. One team executive told The Ringer that if the cap stops mattering, it wrecks franchise values. That's billions of dollars on the line. And there's precedent. Owners don't fear fines, they fear asset erosion. In 2000, the league hammered the Timberwolves for the Joe Smith mess. They stripped 5 first-round picks and leveled massive fines. And that case was mostly about timing money differently. This time, the allegation isn't timing, it's the source and the strings. This is about secret payments totaling $48 million. Back then, Joe Smith had a handshake with owner Glenn Taylor. After 2 below-market deals, they'd pay him huge later. Here it looks like extra money flowed to Kawhi so the Clippers could dodge the cap and build a stronger roster around him. The intent matters, and it's exactly what the rules are designed to stop. And the wildest part? They still haven't won anything despite all of this. It's the most Clippers ending to a scandal you could imagine. All the smoke, all the noise, and no banners. Legal experts say this case differs from past cap workarounds because Kawhi was already on a max deal. He couldn't legally earn more from the Clippers. So this isn't just skirting the cap, it's skirting the entire max contract system. That's a bigger red line with bigger penalties. Here's what I think happens next. We're about to watch one of the biggest scandals in NBA history unfold. It's right up there with Tim Donaghy betting on games he officiated, in my view. If this blows open, the headlines won't slow down, they'll accelerate. Because if Dennis Wong was willing to wire $2 million to save one payment, what else is out there? What other payments were made? What other players might be tied in? Patterns don't form from one dot. They form from many. Don't forget, the Clippers just opened a $2 billion arena. James Harden is making $46 million. They're chasing their first championship ever. Pressure like that can push people to the edge, sometimes past it, and now their best player could see his contract voided. They could lose multiple first-round picks. And remember, they don't have their own draft capital until 2030. That's a long, cold road without picks. This kind of penalty could kneecap the franchise for the next decade. We may never learn the full truth. We may never know how deep it goes. Silence is also a story, and it's rarely a happy one. But we do know this: the Los Angeles Clippers are in real trouble. And Adam Silver, despite all the careful talk about evidence and due process, has the power to drop the hammer. When commissioners move, they move with finality. In the end, it's a lose-lose for the league. And an even bigger loss for a team that seemed to think they could buy a title by any means necessary. The next few weeks will be crucial. Decisions made now will echo into every locker room. This story is getting wilder by the day. Please subscribe and stay tuned for updates.